how are you?
We're just waiting for Dr. Hernandez and then we'll have quorum. Hoping that we would make that today.
I did receive any communication that she wasn't coming.
Okay.
So
I like your new hair.
thank you. You'll laugh at me. I was trying to
summer cut.
Yes, I was trying to prep myself yesterday. It was hello everyone. So if she doesn't join, then what does that mean, Nicole?
It would mean that we are not able to convene.
Okay.
We would not have quorum. Which is why we need new members, Dale.
Yeah, I can fill in.
I welcome more members.
But I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if that would keep me from filling in for.
Yeah, it has to be an approved CAB member or an alternate member.
Right, I know.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Trying to sneak in through the back door here.
Hi, Crawford.
Nicole, you should feel privileged because I'm sorry. Well, there's two Nicoles. Nicole Green, you should feel privileged because the other Nicole did not comment on my hair this morning.
Why, thank you.
For those of you who just joined, we're just waiting for one more member to join to have quorum. And hopefully we'll have that today. I know Dr. Hernandez is on a call with the HIP committee right before this, so hoping that she's just wrapping up and that's why she's not here.
Thank you.
So Patrice and Jill, we're just waiting for one more member for quorum. And Jill, I just had a question for you. Maybe you can help answer. Is there like a specific time frame that you wait Is it like the 15-minute teacher? Like the teacher doesn't show up
Yeah.
15 minutes? Mm,
That's what most people do, 15 minutes, unless
Yeah.
you heard from somebody.
okay. All right. Yes, we have Lila's out, and we're just waiting on Dr. Hernandez.
Nicole, can you text Dr. Hernandez or?
I can try calling her. Let me try doing that. I just got a hold of her and texted her the Zoom link. I'm hoping that she'll join by phone here shortly. Very much apologize for the inconvenience.
Nicole, this is Crawford. would it help? And I'm not sure if you can do this, but I'm a member of CAB, and what if I join this committee? Do I have to officially join or be appointed? But if that would help get the items on your agenda moving, I'd be more than pleased to join the committee. And then I'll quit in about 3 or 4 weeks.
That's a question for Jill, but it's my understanding that regular attending members that have committed to join the committees are what makes quorum, but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just offering to,
Go ahead.
Sorry.
just offering to help.
Yeah, this is Jill Ray with Supervisor Anderson's office. That would be wonderful, a solution. However, you need to be selected in a regular meeting by the body. I think there's a voting mechanism, but what can be done and can be considered, Nicole, for future is the Mental Health Commission has the chair as an alternate member available to sit in to make a quorum on their subcommittees. So that's something you might consider as a CAB to add the chair or
the chair of the full body to sit in on? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for that call out. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes, but I did get a hold of her. She was going to try to join by phone, but I don't know if she's having challenges doing that. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and make the call. I know it's 1 more minute till 15 minutes in, but thank you for the folks that did join and taking the time out to do that. Our next meeting is August 19th, and we will reconvene at that time.
Nicole, just as a heads up, I'll be out of the country on August 19th. So
on August 19th, so
the quorum issue doesn't come up again.
Okay, so we'll work that out offline with the members that remaining members and make sure we have quorum next time. So again, my apologies, and we'll wait. I see Dr. Hernandez is there.
Oh,
She's joining.
Can you hear me?
yeah.
She is on.
All right,
Awesome.
made it.
I just called it, but I guess I can call it back.
Oh, how are you guys? Hi, Patrice.
That was
Hi, Dr. Hernandez. You were right on time.
Thank you.
okay. My heart was pounding.
Thank you. I'm happy. Okay, so we can go ahead and.
So we have everyone for quorum. I don't know if you want to do introductions, but we can get started.
We can just do quick introductions. I know the time has passed, so Nicole Green, Chair for the Programs and Services Subcommittee.
Jerry, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry, Jerry Cohen, Community Advisory Board.
Dr. Hernandez.
Yeah, Dr. Hernandez, Community Advisory Board.
If everyone else can introduce themselves in chat so we can get going, because we've lost a little bit of time.
If I can take this privilege, I'd like to just quickly introduce myself, Patrice Guillory, ORJ Director, and then also recognize Monique Tate, who will soon be joining our office. She will be our new program coordinator, but she hasn't started just yet, so don't direct her to do anything. Okay, so she's joining as a community member, but we are so excited to have her join us. So you'll
Welcome,
be seeing her
Monique.
more on future meetings.
Thank you, Patrice. Okay, so Nicole, we can just jump to public comment. We'll do the intros in the chat. So let's see here. The agenda is also in the chat for anyone. So next on the agenda is public comment. I don't think we have any here. Okay. Moving on. There's no public comment. The next is the approval of minutes from our June 17th subcommittee meeting. I'll give everyone a second. Just want to confirm, does everyone have the agenda? I know Nicole put the link in the comments. Or do we want to share the screen, Nicole? Okay, so do we have anyone that wants to vote on the approval? Oh, she's going to open it up. Okay, here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are the minutes from our June 17th. Give everyone a second to kind of look it over so that we can vote on these items or vote on the minutes. Okay, so for the sake of time, any comments related to our minutes from our last CAP call or our Program and Services Committee call? Dr. Hernandez or Jerry? I can't see the faces now because I have the
Someone wants to make a motion, then we can
okay.
do a roll call vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 6/17/2021.
Have a second?
Sorry, I'll second the motion.
Yeah, we'll do a roll call vote. Nicole?
Aye.
Dr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Jerry? Jerry, was that a yes for the roll? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, yes.
It's okay.
A motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the other items. We have quite a few items to review on the agenda. The goal is to discuss some of the restorative justice reports and some items from our previous calls and kind of figure out what areas that we want to review or look into more. We also have Mark Thomas online as well to give some of his feedback in reference to restorative justice. So the first one on the agenda is the report, starting from pages in the attachment, page 7 through 10. There's quite a few documents, so I'll give us a second due to time to kind of look through it and get some feedback on areas that we may want to look at as a subcommittee in relation to this general meeting for restorative justice report. Let me go to
Patrice, were you on CAB when they did this? Do you recall this report?
I was on CAB when this was taking place, or when this was put together. But I have to be honest with you, I do not recall what what, if any, next steps or follow-ups were done with this particular memo or report.
One of the main things that stood out to me on page 7, just based on our last call, I know one of our takeaways were to look into programs that provide restorative justice. Kind of glanced to the document, it talked about, San Francisco Neighbors Court program and so on. So I did have a note that as a committee, that was something we're going to do. I know Layla's not here today, so I kind of tabled that, but that was one of our goals, were to look into some of the services within Contra Costa County.
I mean, I sent a note to the public defender contact that I have. Unfortunately, I didn't get any response yet, but to my knowledge, there's not an official adult program for restorative justice through the county that I'm aware of.
Nicole, you might want to check with the district attorney.
Okay.
So for this one, I was hoping for any feedback, maybe a action item for us to look into some more. Because I know we had notes on different things we wanted to look into for this, and we can look into the district attorney, and I check in with Layla, because I know that she was also looking for some services, and can revisit this at our next call. But that's where we left off with this section. And in our case, Mark Thomas had some feedback that he may want to provide as well, from his experience with restorative justice.
Hello, this is Mark. I was on Muni and I just got in the dentist's office, so I'm trying to catch up with you. So if you have a specific question, I can answer. I can try to answer.
It's okay. We can look into it. Since you're at the dentist, I won't make you talk while you're in here. So.
Well, I warned them. I'm the only one in the waiting room right now.
So,
but I'm trying to read the document.
So I think for us, it was just more very excited to have you, part of the committee, and really just kind of get some of your feedback. We were looking into the restorative justice, the circle. We had a presentation from RISE on a previous meeting. So just trying to get some information from your experience in reference to restorative justice, just based on your background, any input or feedback you probably provide the committee.
Well, one thing that's always on my mind is on what level do you want to implement it, and that you need consistent buy-in from those administrators or those with authority. If you don't, it doesn't tend to work out too well. I haven't done it in connection with the official justice system right now. I was trying to implement it in a nonprofit organization. It was a large one, but they deal with homeless people. So there was a lot of rules and regulations in San Francisco on how you dealt with it. But that's the issue. But the first level is community building and getting people to understand what it really is about. There's a lot of misinformation about what restorative justice really is. And then there's different levels where you have community building, there's community circles, and then the use of what they call RJ conferencing meetings, which are very formal, and not too many people are able to do it. But yeah, I guess the first thing is to try to involve everyone in community building activities and circles so they understand what's going on. And the whole thing about restorative practices, it actually involves the buy-in of everyone, of, so-called victim and offender, or whatever terminology you want to use, families, community members. It's mainly done in schools right now because we can implement it in schools because all the children are usually open to participating. The older they get, like in high school, the harder it gets, but it does work. But so they could implement it in the schools because it can fit right into the educational process, and the teachers can implement it in their classrooms. And it took a while to get more teachers involved. They've done it in Oakland and San Francisco for over 5 years now. So that's what I'm just saying is this kind of SIS process is different from the other one, is that everyone has to kind of participate in it authentically and not just be at a distance where they say, okay, you do that and that's for them, but we do something else. So that's the whole issue. So if you got judges who are, I guess you could set them up more like drug courts and family courts, but you need the, you need the judges to really be interested in doing it. It does work, but it's a change. So when you have a cultural change, people usually have trouble at first adjusting to it. And if they have authority and they don't adjust, they just say, okay, we had enough of that, and that's the end of it. So that's the lookout. Who will actually implement it and practice it in the system?
Thank you.
So that's how I'm through. Pass.
Thank you.
But it does work where people want to do it.
I appreciate your comment. I mean, it does align into reference to what we're looking into. Like Nicole said, I don't think we seen too many in here related to adults. We did, like I said, do a presentation for the RISE, and that was more in reference to the youth. So, any other? I appreciate that. Any other feedback or comments or from the subcommittee or?
Okay. I just have a question. What's the impact of the sheriff in the jails on restorative justice? And Jill, maybe you can, relate to this question in terms of what is the ability of the Board of Supervisors to impact what goes on in the jail settings with the sheriff, and if one can implement programs like this or not?
So So I'm not sure that most of the restorative justice practices that we're looking at are actually in a jail setting. My understanding is a lot of the restorative practices as a diversion. But as far as in the jail setting, I know the sheriff is in contract with many organizations, the Office of Ed being one of them. Jana is on this line. I believe he is looking at all sorts of different ways addressing the issues that are coming into his jail. And as far as the Board of Supervisors have worked closely to, provide the funding available to what needs to be happening, like with the PLO settlement and the mental health system that's going on in detention health. Our health services department holds that contract. He's been very open and working with all those different organizations that are working within the jail system now. Maybe Jana could expound more on the supports and that have been in place for the Office of Ed with the sheriff. I think that she could speak to that better as far as his willingness to work with organizations.
Yeah, sure, Jill, no problem. So with the Office of Ed, we do multiple types of classes with instructors. So everything from your basic education to get your diplomas or your equivalencies to construction, pre-apprenticeship, culinary, computers. We have our education drug class called Deuce, which is often court ordered for folks to complete before they can be released. We have a commitment to change class, which is close to the Thinking for a Change curriculum. We have a workforce readiness class. we have, trying to think if I'm missing anything. I did attach our new school catalog to the chat, so feel free to download it, take a look at it. That's everything that's being offered currently in the school, focusing on career pathways so we can get people trained, educated, get their documents and get them employed. In the last couple of years, we've started a reentry program called Game Plan for Success, which puts them on a intentional pathway of getting what they need for reentry while they're in custody, and then handing them off to one of the 3 points of entry in the community, the center, the network, or center force. And so we work well with those outside agencies to do that. Our team now has a reentry employment specialist as part of GPS. And so we're focusing a lot now on employment readiness, actually getting their documents for them, helping them with their resumes, helping them with interviewing, actually doing job development and job placement with folks when they get released. So that's a lot of what we do just through the school's contract. But inmate services does hold other contracts for services. Men and Women of Purpose do their program inside. For the women, REACH does a program inside. And then there's just other entities, like Jill was saying, mental health provides services inside. And AODS provides services inside. In fact, they just hired a person to join our GPS team so that our folks can, who are having problems using the phones to get into treatment, there's an actual person that will be able to screen them, work with them, get them placed, and even transport them over to treatment when they're released. So that's kind of the overview of what is happening. If it's not a county agency that does the work, it's typically inmate services who does the contracting with folks who want to provide a service.
Well, and just to jump in again, and thank you, Jenna. Jerry, that restorative justice as I know it is done pre-incarceration. So somebody might be brought in and held in custody as is mandated, but it's done between the public defender, the district attorney, and the judge. It's a practice that the goal is to avert people away from the justice system. So, the sheriff is just required to hold somebody who's been arrested by either his agency or another police agency and or mandated to serve time by the judicial system. So it's not really the sheriff's role, as I understand it, to participate in restorative justice.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Appreciate that.
Well, and if I can, I want to jump in here, and maybe Nicole, if you can, Nicole P, not Nicole G, if you can scroll down to maybe page 10 of this document. I believe it's 10. Yes, the recommended steps to expand RJ. So when CAB members put this together back in 2018, I think the intention or the goal was to actually look at the entire sort of continuum where one might enter into the justice system, and then also the point of reentry, where restorative justice or restorative practices can be implemented. So you could theoretically have restorative justice circles that are taking place within while folks are in custody. It's just that the way in which the practice is then delivered might be slightly different, as opposed to like sort of a victim offender type of arrangement, or in a manner in which the circles are delivered out in the community. So there is opportunity to have restorative justice programming, or at the very least practices be implemented even at the agency level, where it's an actual practice that's being utilized among staff. That can in fact be done in order to create a culture it's a little bit more healing centered and restorative in nature. So the recommendation then from the CAB at the time was to create a restorative justice working group that would include members of CAB, but then also district attorney, obviously Office of Reentry and Justice, Office of Education, because we have seen how restorative justice practices have tend to be well suited for younger population. And I'm assuming there could be other representatives that are necessary to be at the table to really look at the full scope of how restorative justice could be implemented wholesale across the county, and to what degree and to what levels, and what sort of that, how should that programming be structured for the specific, what, depending on what sort of outcomes you want to see, and then within the specific agencies or within the specific communities that it would be delivered in. So that might be still something that CAB members might want to consider now that you guys have had a few presentations that were given to you about the ways in which RJ programs are being implemented in different pockets throughout the community or throughout the county. You know, this might be something that you all want to uplift. Again, as I mentioned in the past, I do not recall CAB taking any action on this after they put this report together. I shouldn't say CAB didn't take any action toward it. I'm sure it was presented, but nothing transpired beyond that. So this is before you to maybe consider whether or not you want to uplift this particular recommendation that CAB had before, and just deciding some specific next steps, or to still do a little bit more inventory to learn a little bit more about restorative justice as a philosophy itself, so that you all are a little bit more acquainted with the practices and programming and what's actually effective.
I appreciate that, Patrice. And I'll see what the rest of the subcommittee wants to do. I personally think maybe we should, and get you guys feedback on that, maybe look into it some more and learn a little bit more about it, and maybe present it back to the full CAB. Once we learn a tad bit more about, the process, and keep on digging a little bit. What are, Jerry or Dr. Michelle, what are any feedback on that? Sorry, I was taking my notes as you were talking.
Well, I would like to know if other, counties are using it, and what, or there are models out there of other groups that are using it, and what the results are and the data coming back on that, what they're finding.
And I agree with that. Like I said, one of our talking points we had were to look into some other agencies. I can also help Lila with that, because I know that she was looking to see what other counties were doing, so we can still leave that as a action item before we represent this back to the CAB and kind of get more familiar with this document in our agenda.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. I'd like to know what's going on in other counties, especially Alameda, Salem, and San Francisco, just so that can give us a foundation of what other people are doing when we incorporate our, what we have and how we can add to it would be really critical, I think, and beneficial.
Do we have any more feedback or public comment for this section of the agenda? Moving on. The next section was in reference to our RISE presentation. So I think it still falls in line as section page 11 of the agenda. So this kind of falls in line with the same thing we already discussed about. Our goal is to look over the presentation. The takeaway from our last call was the same thing in reference to the adult program. So open up for any feedback and kind of look at these slides. But I think the takeaway is the same, to kind of look into more programs in different counties and see what actions and steps they're taking and get familiar. But in reference to the WISE program itself, that was more focused on the RISE Youth Center, sorry. It was more focused on youth than adults.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were also looking for some graphics, not just text, but graphics that showed restorative justice circles.
And I was looking through this.
I was looking for you guys to determine whether or not what you were seeing in here would, I think this is kind of, I guess, a graphic here on this page 17.
I did kind of look through, I didn't really see, I mean, I seen the same graph that you're showing right now, but it, for me, and I mean, I don't know if anyone has any other comment, I didn't really see the linkage or what we were looking for regarding the circle. We were trying to understand more of the process. I think Dr. Hernandez had an awesome question on the last call, but it was to really get more of an understanding of that process. And I didn't really see anything, in case I'm missing it, that kind of talked more about the circle. Yes, when it comes to this PowerPoint, I don't. Dr. Hernandez, I think on our last call, you had a direct question regarding the circle. I think the process of it, I don't.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask Mark if he maybe had an example that he could give us, since he's kind of has a good foundation in this. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I agree with that. I don't see anything in. I'm fine with that if he has an example, because Nicole, I don't see anything in this PowerPoint.
If I can jump in really quickly, just to be fair, we might have to bring this particular presentation back. I understand you wanted some visuals, but it would, I think it probably would be helpful if the actual folks who at RISE, who gives this presentation, have an opportunity to kind of walk you through these pieces here. Because if I'm not mistaken, the last, you guys' last meeting wasn't, RISE didn't present, correct?
Not the last meeting, it was the meeting in May they did, but it wasn't really on the presentation itself. They kind of talked about their circle and talked about the process of the circle. So we were hoping on the PowerPoint, we were hoping that in this PowerPoint, maybe it had the information regarding the circle, because we wanted more understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the goal of bringing this PowerPoint back today, was hoping that that information would be in there. But I think it is a good idea to maybe bring someone back from there, because we did have some follow-up questions regarding their presentation.
Well, and this presentation was presented at our job and it was recorded. I mean, I don't know if it's worth watching that part of the recording to see if you do have questions after watching that.
That would work, Nicole.
Thank you. It's up to you guys.
I just think for the sake of clarity for everyone that is, you know, if you're looking at a presentation that you may not have, you know, the foundational understanding of what was behind this presentation, and you may have follow-up questions and things like that, you definitely need the presenter available so that, you know, you have a little bit more clarity.
Is there a link or something you can? I mean, I'm okay with looking at that to see if it answered my questions. Jerry or Dr. Hernandez, how do you feel about that? And if we want to bring them back, we can, or do we want to just?
Oh, I definitely think that's a good idea. If we can, if Nicole, if you can send us a link and we can watch it and then bring them back, I mean, it would kind of help flesh out all our ideas. And I know when I agree with Patrice. It's like if you have a presentation and not the person that made it, it's really difficult to understand where they're, you know, their vantage point and the perspective they're coming from. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Well, Mrs. Mark, all I was can contribute right now is I know people in the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, and they had made a commitment to use restorative justice, except I'm not sure what they're currently doing, but I still know people who work with probation and reentry. So I will research and see what they're actually implementing it. They implemented it in their jails and in their 5 key schools. So when they had issues inside the jail, they would actually try to use the conferencing type circle between students and inmates and teachers or whoever. They were using it, but you know, things change. So I'm not sure what's currently. I know they try to do a lot of pre-trial diversion. So I will find out what they're doing if they have a good example for us. Also, I know if you're interested in Navajo Nation in New Mexico, they actually use restorative justice type practices in their type of family court. Since restorative practices are justice type practices are really embedded in their culture. It goes back thousands of years that people sit together in a circle and try to work things out. So they actually have some examples. They've actually implemented it into their justice system that's on the reservation. So if anyone's interested in that.
Thank you.
We can do both. I will get that link to you guys, but then we can also, ORJ can work to have RISE present, or at least be maybe at the August meeting to answer any questions and or present this as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark. That's some great information. I made some notes of that, and those examples would be awesome. Any other comments or feedback? For the sake of time, I will move on to the next item, which is the review of the SIM map. There was quite a few things that we went over for that section, starting on page 22. I think our main focus, and correct me if I'm wrong, was this is actually on page. I was prepared. I had the map. It's the map. I'm trying to find the page, Nicole. I think it's page 54. We went over with jury. I know our last takeaway was figuring out or discussing or recommending housing in reference to that map, or looking at it from a committee standpoint of maybe volunteering to give some feedback on from a housing perspective in reference to the community map. I think it's on page 54.
So maybe Jill can also provide some clarity here,
Yeah.
but there's a lot packed in here. And the call out from Jill was to review the recommendations that was presented to the Board of Supervisors in May of 2019. And the sequential intercept map modeling was a piece of it. There's a lot more recommendations that are mentioned here.
Yeah, so actually, if I could point you to page 39 of the packet, because I think that is a good place to start. There were 3 priorities that were set up at the Board of Supervisors that was recommended and that they agreed to. And on the conclusion and next steps on page 39, the goals were out of that initial report was to promote diversion opportunities, maximize jail community transition planning, and ensure data collection and analysis. Those are the 3 areas that the supervisors felt were a good place to start. you know, when I look through this list of that whole entire board order, and where does it start? Number 1 on page 30. I mean, I could go point by point as to what's happened on each one of these areas, or you could just focus on page 39. It's up to you how you want to proceed.
I don't mind going by point. I know it's a lengthy document. I do want more information. I'll open it up to the rest of the committee for their feedback as well.
I would give you just a super high elevation overview on each point. I couldn't speak in great length. So just as an FYI and a time factor.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm open to you speak on the points. I think that would be awesome.
Well, I think I'd like an overview, just, you know, what it's all about and what you're looking for and what we're looking for. You know, I would just like an overview on it. I don't need a really detailed point by point. Just give me an overview.
Well, the overview is that the county joined the Stepping Up initiative, which has no funding. It had some technical assistance grants, but it was sort of more of a theory that we joined in on and the goal was to reduce the amount of people with mental health struggles from our detention system. That's the highest overview I could give you on what the point of Stepping Up was.
Okay. So it all has to do with mental health issues.
It has to do with reducing incarceration of individuals who could be better helped in other ways.
Okay.
Nicole, did you want me to go through the numbers, like number 1?
Yes.
Okay. So establish an Uber committee. We had quite a few meetings of that Uber committee, which involved the department heads involved in the system. And, you know, sort of, as we all know, we were seeing each other in many, many meetings every month. And this was just one more. And it was determined that it was taking too much away to create this Uber committee, that this Uber committee pretty much already existed in many other forms. And so to look at using some of those other forms, such as the CCP, the Community Corrections Partnership, is really made up of that Uber committee, those divisions and departments. So that one was shelved for the time being. Number 2, establish standardized metrics and data sharing. I think that that's been an ongoing operation that the ORJ has been integral part of. And, you know, we've done it through our JOB, the Racial Justice Oversight Body, amongst other platforms. And so I think it's a work in progress. I think great progress has been made, actually. Some of that is going to be on hold for data systems to be put in place too, which was really something that my boss in particular has been pushing hard for departments to really invest in data collection strategies.
Okay.
The number 3, increase countywide deflection and diversion strategies. I think that's something that we have been working on for quite some time. Exciting news this month, we're launching our community crisis response, which answers the second part of that statement. So that is moving forward. And I think deflection and diversion strategies is something we're looking at both the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council, as well as the Racial Justice Oversight Body and so other places as well. The district attorney and the public defender being integral parts of those. And then number 4, incorporating peers and peer supports, I think are happening across the system. We see that in our health, housing, and homeless division. We see that in our behavioral health division, that they're adding in peer and peer supports, as well as in our detention system. I think that's something with that answers Jerry's question on what's happening inside too, is providing those peers and peer supports to help people shift into a different sort of life. Number 5, identifying familiar face high utilizer populations. That is something I think that each division is doing, addressing in different ways. We had whole person care, which is now swiveled to CalAIM, which actually did this and identified those people. And so each division is working with those populations, except for, I would say, AOD. I'm not sure that they have a targeted list of those individuals. Number 6, comprehensive substance use disorder strategy, I think, is a work in progress. AOD.
Lost you.
Yep. Jill, we lost you.
Lost you, Jill.
Jill, we lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's happening with my Wi-Fi here. So the AOD, did you hear me on number 6, the AOD?
Yeah.
It cut out right
Okay.
when you said AOD.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably been one of the slowest departments to really implement broad changes, and that's due to the serious lack of funding for AOD services. However, they did just get a grant, and so they are placing counselors in our detention systems so that they can work with getting people connected to services, as well as a ride directly to a service provider upon release. Number 7, pretrial interventions. You know, the public defenders has taken that program and run with it. They've done a fantastic job. So I think we have great success in that area. Number 8, improve pre and post arrest diversion opportunities. That again is a work in progress. This is that 1810 program. We expect to have an update on what's happening with that from our behavioral health division. And that is a pretty significant piece of legislation that's going to allow those people struggling with the most severe mental illness to be diverted away from the criminal justice system into treatment. So that's pretty exciting. The number 9 is beyond our ability to implement change while we continue to work with our court system through a variety of opportunities. That's outside our jurisdiction. And number 10, I think, has been addressed, that people who have been incarcerated at some point in time in the past are open to participate in our AB 109 programming. And then number 11, I think, is a work in progress as well. And I think we've been, looking at really ways to, I think Jana and the Office of Ed has been a huge piece of that. They have been a huge piece at really upping the game when it comes to what people are offered in our detention system. Probation, we have a new probation chief. You all have met her, and I think that speaks for itself right there. Number 12, I think we're moving in that direction for sure. And then 13, yeah, I think that's one that's being discussed at both the national and state level, connecting people to services when they lose it because they go into custody. And for anybody who doesn't know, when somebody is incarcerated, they no longer can qualify for Medi-Cal while they're in custody. So all detention health funding is out of the county funds. There is no Medi-Cal reimbursement for any of those services that are provided within our detention system. And then getting people reconnected to that upon leaving our detention system is critical in ensuring that they have continued care. So I think that's just the super high level overview of where we were and where we are. And I think it's a really good opportunity now to relook at all of these points to kind of build what we're doing now. And the CAO's office, Tim Newell, is who the point person was on this, felt that it was a really good time for ORJ to kind of take this on. And I'm happy to help facilitate communications with department heads so that we can develop what's happening now. Because I think there's been a lot more that's been added into our programming and our services that could be added into this map and to our array of services.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Jill. So I guess my takeaway and question from here, and forgive me if I missed a point the last call we had. Denise was on there. We were discussing housing and changing, and we were looking at the map to kind of figure out, is this something that we want to take on from a reentry standpoint to discuss the housing aspect of it? And I know it's related to mental health, so I took a lot of notes in reference to what you were saying, Jill, and it provided some good information. One of the key parts that stuck out to me, and I highlighted the section, I promise you I did. I think it was section 10 related to AB 109 and mental health. So forgive me, and if anyone else has any other feedback, I guess figuring out where we would discuss housing based on all the information Jill would, or how would we as a committee provide feedback to this? Was kind of my takeaway.
Well, can I jump in here before Jill
Yes,
speaks? So to your point about housing, so you're right. So I would say that number 10, using Jill's language, it is a work in progress, because yes, though we've expanded the eligibility criteria for those who can participate in AB 109 services, housing services in particular are limited for those beyond the AB 109 probation status. So that's where the housing piece kind of fits in, Nicole, to your point, where how is it possible where we can expand housing resources so that we're touching more than just those who are on AB 109 probation status, but anyone that's justice involved that is also eligible for other AB 109 funded resources can also have access to housing services as well. Beyond just the typical entry points for any sort of social services that is open to the public, right? Creating a specialized reentry pathway for those who are justice involved. So that's where I think the housing piece fits in. Now, to your greater question about where CAB might have some input on where things stand, I think Jill already sort of spoke to that, and that it's probably a good time to sort of revisit with a lot of the different department heads as to where things stand with these particular recommendations. Certainly ORJ can play a role in that. And then obviously having community voice involved in what could be potentially the next steps from here is certainly fruitful. Jill, did you want to add anything to that latter point?
Nope, I think you covered it quite well, Patrice.
Patrice, I do thank you. I do want to ask a question. One of the key things that you mentioned, and that's good news in reference to opening up housing for not just those that fall under AB 109, but anyone that have in reentry as a whole. Is it going to be looked at in reference to just, that the AB 109 in relation to hopefully I'm saying it right, to mental health, because there is still limitations to those in AB 109 as well, for other services related to mental health or other housings that are out there. With the funding that's provided to them, they are limited to the services they can actually get into under AB 109. Am I explaining that correctly? Does that make sense?
Right. So I think the critical piece here is like integrating health and housing for specific populations, specific subpopulations within the justice involved population, right? So because as you know, as a housing provider, you just can't house people,
right?
and that be enough. The actual wraparound support that's integrated within that housing program has to be adequate and suitable for the particular population that you're serving. I would say that in the experience of launching the Cocoa Lead Plus project a few years ago, which I believe was referenced in, was it point 12, maybe? Anyway, it was a diversion project between the Behavioral Health Division, Antioch Police Department, where at the level of touching the at the point where a police officer charges an individual on a misdemeanor offense, that individual could then be diverted, has the opportunity to be diverted into programming. What we found through that project is that the majority of those who were getting picked up on misdemeanor charges, they in fact, and were repeatedly arrested by that police department on either the same charges or similar level charges, right? Those individuals were chronically homeless. They had acute mental health issues. And so then the programming on the diversionary side, once the person was diverted, wasn't always completely adequate to meet the needs of that individual. So you're right, the housing, the way in which housing is implemented and the critical wraparound services that are needed to sustain them in housing, to keep them stable, is really important and should certainly be included in or woven into a couple of these points here. So, you know, CAB always has an opportunity to speak to, and has had in history of really speaking to, let's expand our housing resources to not simply be, you know, transitional housing and sober living environments, or just focused on individuals, but then also families as well. So there's room for growth. I think AB 109 gave us, you know, sort of a foundation to at least make housing available for folks returning home. But now there's opportunity to really think about how we could put resources to grow from that.
And I'll just jump in there on that, because I think that this is a critical conversation happening in our county right now. There's a ton of dollars coming from both the state and federal government for permanent supportive housing. And I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about those people who need something more than just a place to live. They need really those supportive services to succeed. And so, in fact, there was a webinar yesterday that was on behavioral health and criminal justice and about permanent supportive housing. And 25 minutes into it, it was bombed and it was overtaken. So they had to cancel it. So we were going to hear like about all these great funding opportunities, and they have to reschedule it. So there was a lot of county staff on that call. It was over 200 people last time I looked at the number before it got bombed. And all of the key players in the county who are listening in, because this is just an important subject. It's an important issue. We're very well aware of it. There's nowhere near enough permanent supportive housing for the need. And it's a variety of levels of permanent supportive housing, right? Some of them might need it for long-term. Some of them might need just short-term until they can transition into something else. So we're very, very aware of that in the county.
Yeah.
So I think this is, that's a lot of great information. I appreciate it. I mean, I think we can, you know, I'll look for feedback from the rest of the committee, but if we tap into this, I guess, you know, discussing with the CAB or within our committee about the housing options or feedback or, you know, recommendations or looking at, you know, this document, but I think it's a great, I mean, I think it's a great thing to be involved in. I mean, that's where we left off on our last call. Is this something that we want to be able to look into and be a part of and provide that information on in relation to housing? Does anyone from the committee have any more feedback or questions or? Okay, well, thank you, Joan. Thank you, Patrice. The next item on our agenda was to review the First Clearinghouse website link. On page 130. Thank you for pulling that up, Nicole. So forgive me. I know I was taking notes from here. I know this was a link that we discussed to take a look at. And I'll be honest, I have not had a chance to take a look at it at all. Um,
So let me just say really quickly, and I'm not sure where the original conversation started for checking out this particular clearinghouse. But my guess is this is somewhat connected to our shift to performance-based contracting. Is this correct, Nicole? Okay, I see you nod your head. Yes.
Yeah. So Denise recommended looking at this if they wanted to look at language supporting performance-based programming.
Right.
Look at this.
So our office is preparing to shift the way we do contracts with our service providers. We want to invest more in ensuring that programs that are implemented out in the community are ones that are in fact evidence-based. And so we will be creating through our procurement process and through our RFPs an opportunity for those who are interested in applying for resources to launch programs to also include within their proposals actual evidence from various clearinghouses that are available to them that will show that the programs that they are looking to implement have some proven results. And so this particular clearinghouse is one with regards to different housing models, is my understanding. That are actually have proven to be effective. And no, not just housing, it may be a few other things, but that have shown some pretty positive results across a number of different communities. That said, we recognize that as we're moving into that direction, that when you implement programs based on evidence that has been researched and have been somewhat uplifted as the gold standard. Sometimes the way in which it is implemented within a specific community that may have some unique needs or just unique characteristics may not always present or provide or present certain outcomes that are similar to what the evidence has shown. So we recognize that too as we're making the shift. But however, we are quite aware that we have a lot of programs that are being delivered or services that are being delivered currently that are not necessarily evidence-based. They have certain principles that we certainly endorse, but we have not gotten to the place where we can actually showcase that it has presented some positive results in the communities that we are, looking to invest in and to serve. So that's why we're moving in that direction. We want to be able to show that our investments are in fact producing great results for us based on evidence that have shown. That's what we want to invest in, things that have proven to show positive results. And then that way we can then on our own look locally, do some research locally of what sort of impacts we are making with the investments that we're making in the community. Hopefully all that makes sense, but so this is then an example of a clearinghouse where you can look across a number of different categories as to the types of programs you want to see, whatever settings that those programs are placed within, and the research and evaluation behind that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Patrice. That really sounds good.
So maybe we could pull up an example. Nicole, if you can click, let's do mental health. That'll be a good one. So you can see Seeking Safety, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy program that's focused on survivors of trauma. That particular practice has been implemented in different parts of the county. Let's see if you can click on a setting. So community or correctional facility down on the left. So you can, yeah, one of those. So again, it gives you sort of a listing of different programs that have been used in the past. Actually, if you can go to the top where it says rating colors and systems, just so you can kind of get a sense of what, top right, there's a couple of headings, right? You see where it says rating colors and systems, right above seeking safety, yeah. So assigns it by rating colors here. Blueprints, so I'm just reading the bulleted points here. When a clearinghouse provides an overall rating for a program, the color reflects that rating. For example, if Blueprints rated a program as promising, the database would designate the program as yellow, second highest rated. Blueprints, CEBC, crimesolutions.gov, all of which were some programs, provide one overall rating to each program. When a clearinghouse provides multiple ratings based on a program's individual outcomes, the color reflects the highest rated one. For example, if WWC rated one outcome as positive and another as no effects, the database would designate the program as green, highest rated. So, just some examples here of how you can navigate this site. Scroll down a little more, Nicole. There's a legend there to the left. So green stands for highest rated, yellow second rated, blue mixed effects, and then gray no effects. And no effects mean that the program had no impact based on high quality evidence. That is, well, I can't read any further. It's cut off there. So this is a great way if a provider wanted to, especially like a new provider or an existing one, wanted to, let's use Shelter Inc. for example, wanted to expand its resources to add some additional programming to its housing services. They may want to take a look at this particular clearinghouse to see certain programs that might be fitting for some of the clients that have some mental health challenges. And so they may look through here to see what additional programming can they may be useful for a similar population that they can test out and then recommend as an opportunity for funding to be implemented within their existing service.
This is great information. You answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you about the yellow little bubble and the green. You did answer that. So thank you for the rating colors. So.
Yeah, there's a lot here. So I certainly encourage, I know I will go back to this myself. I certainly encourage folks to look at this. This is from, actually it looks like it's a combination of various clearinghouses in one database that the Pew Center put together. So it looks pretty easy to navigate, and anything that we can do to help support you guys as you navigate this. If there's certain even if there's certain programs, if you take a look at this on your own time, if there's certain programs that come up for you where you think, you know what, this would be great if does our community have this? Is this something that we might want to look into to funding or supporting? Certainly let us know, and it'll be something that we can certainly consider.
Yeah, thank you, Patrice, for bringing that up, because when Nicole was looking at it, I saw something for women with disabilities, and I think it was under community, but I was thinking the county needs that. And it would be great if we could, you know, research that, especially in the criminal justice system. So this is awesome. Thank you, guys.
So as a committee, do we want to take, time to take a look at it and see if there's any services like you seen Dr. Hernandez, and maybe in our next meeting, point out some of
Yeah,
those services? Okay.
definitely. I'm totally going to research this. Is really,
Yeah, I threw it on my calendar.
yeah, this is awesome. I feel like it's a new toy.
Right. I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Nicole, I was watching the clock and I wanted to make sure that I was following the time. Am I still good?
Yeah, we have until 1, and the next one is the work plan. That was just there in case you guys wanted to talk about that, but.
Okay. Yeah, we can look at it. I just wanted to make sure I was trying to watch my little clock. On my Okay, awesome. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. So we can look at the work plan really quickly, which is on page 131. So I know the first part of it was in reference to expanding to restorative justice, and we're actually working on that right now. I had a great discussion on that today, so we are working on on that section. Part 2 of it was the survey, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand, we are okay with the survey that we already had in place. I believe that majority of everyone responded to that. We haven't really talked about this one in a while, but I know on one of our previous calls, that survey went out and we were okay with the results. Maybe we want to take a look at it again on our next meeting, but we haven't looked at it in a while. I know, Nicole, on one of our meetings, you had the actual, the survey was part of our agenda.
Yeah, we had that, the kind of summary of what the call outs or highlights were from summarizing all of the responses. Is that what you're referring to, or you wanting to see the individual responses as well?
No, the last one, the call outs. I would love to be able to revisit because I know we haven't discussed the survey in a while, so kind of refresh myself. But I'm open for any other feedback from the committee members because I wasn't part of the initial survey. Jerry, I believe you were on the committee before with the survey.
Yeah.
Should we look at it again in our next call, or? Because part of it we already developed.
It's pretty short. I mean, we can look at it. I know mental health and housing came up as one of the big themes that were opportunities, which I think that's not news to this group, right? But we can bring it up.
Okay, and the last section was a reference to program and services. We haven't really started any site visits. I know that things are opening back up, so we may want to revisit this again because I know that was one of our takeaways last time was due to COVID. We weren't actually doing any site visits. All of the other programs are just now starting to open up a tad bit. So we were trying to figure out how was we going to actually visit with AB 109 CBOs and do site visits. So maybe we can start looking back into that now since things are opening back up. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but but everyone is pretty much opening back up now.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful to identify in the next meeting what is the goal here. Is it to meet with certain specific CBOs that you have questions for, or because you can also bring them to the committee to answer it virtually as well.
Good idea. Any feedback or comments on the work plan outside of what we just discussed?
I'm just looking at the work plan. It says that you want to analyze by September.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to. It's not going to happen.
I've created a project timeline to present tomorrow to Policy and Budget Subcommittee, which might be helpful for one of you to join, because I think that's going to help you understand if you want to provide any input to that group, when you need to do that by.
That's tomorrow. Okay.
Or here's another possibility. Since that second bullet in the comprehensive needs assessment, given your point, Nicole G, that a lot of the sites haven't really opened up just yet. I mean, you still could do some interviews, things of that nature, but you'll likely hear back from a lot of providers that they are, you know, just trying to get back in the swing of things, are trying to figure out sort of what their hybrid approach will likely be. You know, still waiting on policy changes from the state and also from the county about how much we can open up, how much can people meet in person, things like that. So all of that will still have an impact on what programming would look like, but at the very least, the look at local, regional, and national needs could be something that this body might want to take up next to do further research or review. I'm not quite sure what was the intent with that, if that was to if there was certain reentry related programs you're wanting to explore, similar to like what you're doing with the restorative justice. But that seems to be, I'm just thinking in this particular work plan goal, that might be one place where you may want to start. If not, then can you scroll a little bit more to the top, Nicole? I feel like your restorative justice work is still kind of left undone, right? There's still more to be done there, and it looks like the timeline is to have it complete and given to the CAB during this November, the full body by November. So those may be a couple of ways in which you might want to think about next steps for your work plan. You know, you still have time with the survey, since that is, you're looking to have that by, to at least start collecting responses back in April, for April.
So reference.
So they opted out of doing a survey this year and are just using responses from last year.
Right.
Is that what you're referring to, Patrice?
I missed the question.
They're not sending out a survey this year. They're opting out and taking the responses from last year to move forward with any recommendations from the summary.
Yeah, that's my understanding of this goal here.
Yeah. So that's pretty much done. I mean, the recommendations are not, but.
So can we take a look? So I know we've already, like you said, we put out the survey, and forgive me for this part, because as I stated, I'm trying to take this part over. So just want to make sure I cover everything on it. So at this point, Nicole, do we have the recommendations? And forgive me again if I'm missing a piece.
No, I put on next steps that we want to continue reviewing restorative justice circle examples.
Okay.
We want to bring back the review to review the survey results, the summary from last year to look at.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And then revisit the site visit strategy and what we want to do there. And we might just have to talk offline, and then the results clearinghouse, like what we want to do in the next meeting with that, and then continuing the efforts with the SIMMAP final report. Okay. We'll have to talk offline about how we piece that together to have our next meeting.
And I took some notes, so I can remember
towards these things.
Okay. Any other comment related to this? I think that's it. We've already went over our next steps. So I think that's everything, Nicole.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Hernandez, for making it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.